What we're talking about is preserving an intact avenue of honour, because what we're going to get is, instead of that beautiful long walk or bike ride or driving your car down that beautiful winding intact avenue with that tunnel of light it's been called by Peter Carey, that famous author, you know, with the cathedral-like canopy, you just sweep your way through into Bacchus Marsh, looking across the market gardens. It's a beautiful journey and a beautiful memorial and a beautiful elm avenue. We're going to lose all of that. You know, our heritage is so important. Once it's gone forever. So that's what we're talking about. The Avenue of Honour was planted by the community in 1918, while the war was still raging, as a way of commemorating all the soldiers from the district who were fighting overseas. And those trees were planted by about 1,000 members of the community, 200 odd trees, to commemorate both the ones fighting and the ones who had died overseas.
The plan is to extend Woolpack Road across the avenue, joining into the freeway, and it will be a truck bypass route, which means that trucks will be directed to go that way, and we'll be able to put load restrictions on Grant Street and other streets so that trucks will be legally prevented from coming along there. Currently we have about 600 truck movements a day along Grant Street. There's about 300 along Main Street. It's necessary to get the trucks off these roads for the betterment of the traffic, betterment of the community and the general well-being of everybody.
I don't think Vic Roads or Council have ever really worked with the community early and persistently to find out what we want. For example, they've never surveyed the community to find out, do we want this or not? And on our evidence from petitions and Facebook and rally numbers, we would think that the community's in the majority against this plan.
I think it is absolutely outrageous when alternatives have been identified by the members of the community, and when alternatives have been identified by Vic Roads themselves. I think it's absolutely outrageous that Vic Roads and Council pursue this crazy idea, pushing forward this idea and desecrating the Avenue of Honour.
Geographically, Bacchus Marsh is a difficult place because it's in a valley and there's a lot of steep grades, so truck routes that would go across the valley further down, across like where Deep Creek is to Hopetoun Park, I believe would be incredibly expensive. The only other alternatives that I've seen is still incorporate truck movements on the avenue. So from that aspect, one of the important things is that the avenue ceases to be a main road. If it's not a main road, then the council will assume control of it, so we'll be able to control the destiny of the avenue into the future and continue our program of maintaining the trees. It was an opportunity that we saw to actually get a truck diversion around the town. It probably won't come up again. We won't get the opportunity. And to be honest, the other alternatives that we saw would mean in most cases either more trees would go or people's houses would go. So that's what the decision was made for the most appropriate route.
You have to be careful how you answer a question that uses the phrase vested interests, but there are trucking groups in and around Bacchus Marsh who for financial reasons would find that proposed roadworks would save them money, make things more convenient, make things easier. And sure, it will potentially help them. But you have to look at the whole community and the bigger issue of an intact war memorial, an intact town entrance, an intact beautiful elm avenue. And you can't just see it from a single business-oriented, trucking-oriented point of view. I'm convinced that we're stuck at just looking at it in one way, which is a roads and truck point of view.
My uncle died when he was 22. He'd only been there 6 months in France when he was killed. He's got a tree down in the avenue, which I look at every time we drive past, actually. And to us, because he's buried in France, that's the only thing that we've got.
I've heard a lot of people talk anecdotally about the fact that it's the reason they've moved to Bacchus Marsh rather than somewhere else. I mean, as you drive through that avenue and that canopy of trees, it's a beautiful drive into a town. Not many towns have that sort of thing. Loads of towns in Victoria have avenues of honour, but they've all fallen into disrepair, or some trees have been removed because they're small roads that have been widened, etc. And our avenue has stayed intact all this time, and it's coming up to its 100th anniversary soon.
My connection is that my father and his three brothers went to the war. The oldest one was killed at Gallipoli when he was just 21. And of course, having lived in the marsh all my life, we were brought up to really respect the avenue. It's been always something in my life, and the trees, and we visited them, as Gwen said we do. And I just was horrified when I heard it's going to cut the avenue in half.
It's at my heart. I've lived here I lived in the Avenue of Honour for over 30 years, or on the Avenue of Honour. The family has been in the Avenue of Honour for 4 generations now, 5 generations now. So it's a part of my soul, really.
The Avenue of Honour is a very important heritage icon, and for many years, going back almost 20 years, the Avenue of Honour was planned to be listed, or heritage listed. And finally, mid last year, that heritage listing took place. Many people would say long overdue, given the fact that the Avenue of Honour is nearly a century old, and what an important thing it is to not only the community but Victoria and Australia. To do their works, that meant that Vic Roads and Council had to apply to Heritage Victoria to get permission to bulldoze their roundabout and crossroad through the Avenue of Honour. Both sides argued their cases, and I think on the day we thought we'd done a great job. And a month or 6 weeks later, Heritage Victoria ruled that in fact the heritage damage to the Avenue of Honour proposed by this plan was to be too great, and therefore the plan should not go ahead. But unfortunately, after several weeks, Vic Roads and Council decided to appeal Heritage Victoria's decision, and that means that it goes above Heritage Victoria to what is called the Heritage Council for a further hearing, and that's what we're waiting for at the moment. Unfortunately, there's another tier above that. If the Minister for Planning feels that he wants to have the final say, he calls in the project, and what's happened now is that he has called in the project. We're very worried that no matter what Heritage Council rules, he will then overrule Heritage Council and say go ahead. We're not sure where he stands on the situation, but the feeling from a lot of people is, including the National Trust, is that he will allow the works to go ahead.
It is a lot about heritage. Council is very aware of its heritage obligations. We're talking about moving 5 trees out of 281. We're talking about affecting about 45 metres of a 3.3 kilometre avenue. The council spends a lot of ratepayers' money each year maintaining the trees. We have a program to make sure that this avenue is there for our future generations. I think people have got to have a perspective of how this is going to affect our town and the community in the future, and we are being respectful of the heritage, and we're respectful of the avenue, and you know, honouring the people who served in the Bacchus Marsh area is not really about a single tree. It's about a whole avenue, and the whole avenue, the integrity is still there, and it still will be.
Look, it's gone from 9 trees down to 5. I think George Squires Mitchelson's one, Morley's another, Minette's another. I think 2 out of those 5 actually died in France. So those trees are important memorials for us here in Australia, that these represent people buried in France. In fact, the Ballarat Avenue of Honour used to be longer than this one, but it's been cut across several times now. So it's nothing, it's a shade of what it was in the past. It's not a patch on what we've got here. And I think you'll find to this day locals in Ballarat regret that. And to this day, there is still talk about how can we restore our avenue of honour to its former glory. I think we look around Bacchus Marsh today and regret some of the beautiful old buildings that have been lost, and wonder how that happened and who could have let that happen. And I think we're going to regret it, and our children and grandchildren will regret it as well.